Hi guys,
Hey everyone,
welcome back to Wine Night Therapy.
and welcome back to my channel as well.
Oh my god, it's the ultimate collaboration over here today.
Literally, you guys have no idea. We have like 10,000 cameras and phones and like things going on right now.
I feel a little intimidated, not gonna lie.
Me too. So we thought it would be an amazing thing to kind of do a little collab since Luca is a law student and I am too, and being a law student is just a big topic, especially in the UK, and it can be a little bit intimidating when you apply or like when you accept an offer. So
I can give you like a bigger overview of what that's like.
So first of all, I'm a second-year university student at Queen Mary, and I do English law and French law.
I'm a first year student at University of Westminster, and I do LLB English law.
General info. Studying law in the UK is very different than studying law in any other country, especially the US and Canada, because you can do law straight away for your undergraduate. So as soon as you do your IB or A-levels or any other equivalent, you can just head into doing law.
Yeah, law undergrad is 3 years here.
Qualifying degree is 3 years,
Yeah.
but then you can have either like a year abroad or a foundation year or 2 years abroad.
Exactly. Or if you take a different undergrad, then in 1 year you can do conversion course.
GDL, and then that's a bit more focused on like practicing the law.
Exactly.
And less on reading the law. Also, you need to understand that it is common law that you do here, so it's very much, I mean, you've seen it as well, very specific and based on like precedent and like case law that has happened before.
So like parliamentary acts and case law, so previous decided cases which make up for the precedent. It's important to note that common law is also in the US, Australia, Israel, New Zealand, I'm pretty sure. So it's applicable to a lot of different countries, not just the
When it comes to applying, there are a lot of things that you need to take in consideration. The application process can be a little bit daunting. The first thing I would say is to look at deadlines. Usually you would apply through UCAS, which is the platform that we use to apply to university for most of undergrad courses anyway here. You can apply to up to 5 law schools, so universities, and it costs, I think, £25. Lines for Oxbridge, so Oxford and Cambridge are different though. They're in October.
Yeah.
For us, it was in January, I believe.
I'm pretty sure, yes. And for UCAS, I think now it changed because now you don't need a personal statement. I think now you're answering questions. When we used to do UCAS, and when we applied through UCAS, we had to do a personal statement. So I had to do it for my previous course and I had to do it for my law course.
One thing that you need to understand when applying to law is that you are applying to quote unquote read the law.
Yeah.
So it's not because you're studying law that you will become a lawyer, and it's not because you want to become a lawyer that you should study law. A lot of lawyers, like at open days and things like that just haven't studied law at the beginning. So you need to understand that it is important to show in your personal statement and in your application in general that you are motivated to study the law, to read the law, to analyze the law, and not so much just talk about your career.
There's a fine line between being a high flyer or being, really arrogant and already feeling like you're the law student, because a lot of prestige comes with being a law student. We can't lie, but at the same time, you have to work super, super hard to keep up with being a law student, right? So I think humility is very important. And no matter what you do and what career path, it's very, very true that you apply to read the law. Just because you'll finish a 3-year qualifying law degree won't make you a lawyer. It's also kind of like a safety net, because if you decide you don't want to become a qualified lawyer, you can become a journalist. You can still work as a paralegal, you can work in the legal industry, but in different forms. Law degree can be a tool for a lot of other things you might want to do later on.
Also, another thing when it comes to internships and showing that you have work experience, you don't have to have it, but I know that if you do stress out and you want to put something in your personal statement, there's this website called Forage, and you can do like a lot of like mini online internships, and they're really praised by firms because they are essentially created by big firms.
I've done Linklater's Introduction to Commercial Law Forage work experience, but it was actually a lot of hard work. It was actually kind of tough because having no legal background, it was a bit tough to do. But at the same time, it was so insightful and so amazing because it was actually created by Linklaters. And so I really felt like I was working with a team, and I had to do dispute resolution. And it was an amazing opportunity, and it was an amazing experience. And I could also put it on my LinkedIn. I mentioned it in my personal statement. And I think, even if you have other work experience, I think it's really, really handy to use Forage.
And one last thing when it comes to application, you have the LNAT for a lot of law courses and a lot of universities in the UK, but it's not kind of the all or nothing. And I would always encourage you to not only apply to schools that require the LNAT. It's an extremely hard test, and even if you study for it really hard, you have no idea really what the questions are going to ask you and what the essay is going to ask you. This is an exam that you usually typically will do the application process, I think max December or January, and you won't get your grade before at least February. So have applied without knowing your score.
Yeah.
And there's no way to fail it, but if you've had a really low score, universities probably won't accept you, and then you'll be in a situation where even if your personal statement bangs, even if you're motivated, this will have taken you down. So I would always say, like, do also apply to universities that don't require it. Westminster doesn't, and then Queen Mary doesn't either, and Warwick doesn't either, City doesn't either. Like, there's great universities that don't require it. Okay, how it's structured.
For me, surprisingly, in my first year, I had 3 modules in the first semester and 3 modules in the second semester. In the second semester already, I could have 1 elective that I could just choose whatever I wanted. And it was very interesting to me because I heard that, for example, in Queen Mary, you have different number of modules and less electives. And I guess every university does it differently. But in my experience with Westminster, in the first semester, I had tort, contract, and LPP, which was like law, policy, and practice. So there's like an introduction to law course, basically. And now in my second semester, I had criminal and public compulsory, and I chose law and social media. What's interesting though with Westminster, I think the first year doesn't count at all towards your degree. You need to pass it to pass your first year of your degree, but your score doesn't matter. And it's very interesting to me overall that in the UK, anything above a 70 is a first. It's really not that hard to get a first in Westminster, I would say, if you attend the classes and if you keep up to date with everything. Reaching a 70 is not so unreasonable and not so unrealistic.
So in contrary to that, for us, we had 4 modules in the first semester, 4 modules in the second semester, and then this year we also have 4 modules. So it's always 4 modules. Depending on the credits you have, sometimes like it's like a half module and then it changes in the second semester. So overall, we had land law, contract law, public law, and law and contest for the first semester. So very different to what you have. They're still like core law modules, but I think they've just placed them differently. And law and context changed to European law in the second semester. So that was my first year. There were some that I loved, some that I hated, honestly. And then this second year, I would say I work a lot harder just because you need to. I worked hard in the 2 years, but it's just there's a lot more content. And now I do tort law, which is what you do already. Equity and trusts, which is a bit more evolved from land law. French law, which is part of my degree, and I do criminal law, which I absolutely love. And I've been really enjoying the second year, but it just goes to show that like applying to universities, you need to generally pick what you like the most. Because I mean, had I known that, for example, there was a uni that was doing that where I could pick social media law, I would have maybe changed unis and things like that. So that is something to look into. And overall, for example, at Queen Mary, I would say for law, I think everyone would praise it. It is really hard to get a first. So I think again, depends on the universities.
I think it's also different because I have 3 modules per semester this year. My lectures are an hour and a half long. My tutorials are an hour and a half long. In preparation for the lectures, I get these knowledge nuggets, which are pre-recorded lecture videos. So technically the lecture is even more than an hour and a half long. So I would say even though it's only 3 modules, it's 3 very heavy modules. Whereas for you, I'm pretty sure the teaching time is a lot less.
Yes. So for us, I was really surprised at the beginning. And I do think that it is a UK university specific thing. I think you got a bit more lucky in that sense. For us, we have 2 hours of lectures for each module and then 1 hour of tutorials. Usually it's more like 50 minutes. So we get questions and tutorials, just so you understand. It's more like mini groups of students, maybe like up to like 10 or 15 that just like discuss the content.
You reflect on the lecture.
You reflect on the lecture of the previous week. And in lectures, usually they're not interactive. So you just kind of like type and listen. I didn't have them in person. This year I do. I would say it is really important to keep up to date with the content. Some readings are more worth doing than others. So that's also for you to figure out. But yeah, overall, just do expect having a lot of free time, I would say. Even as a law student, that's kind of up to you to structure your time.
And with that free time, I think, especially in the first year, it's so worth getting involved with stuff.
It's a good transition. I think we'll do the extracurriculars first because of that. But you need to understand that usually your university will have a lot of like options and you need to take them. I know that at the beginning for me, I really feel like I didn't do enough during year 1. Now I probably do too much. But I'm part of ELSA, I'm part of a lot of like law societies, I'm like head of marketing for like 3 law societies. I also am head of marketing for a law podcast, and honestly I would say it has been a blessing.
For example, I'm on the committee for the law society. I am a module rep for 2 of my modules this year, which means I can reflect on what needs to be taught better, what needs to be taught differently. I can engage with students and then reflect that in my meetings with head of level 4 modules, for example, or even my module leaders. I also do the law newsletter, which helps me get experience through interviewing the head of law school, the head of certain modules. I think it's super important to get involved straight away, especially in the first year or maybe even in second year when you have more time on your hands.
Also, do get engaged with like your own kind of course. For me, the English law and French law course has a society, and I'm social events officer for it. And even if it feels like it's not necessarily like a job in law, it feels good to be always engaged with your community. Also, if you want to think of extracurriculars and what you need to do on the side, if you really want to qualify, for example, as a solicitor, the like kind of the usual route that I understood, I think way too late, that I wasn't taught, is kind of, okay, you do open days, and the second year you apply for vacation schemes, and then the third one you hopefully get a training contract. Like, okay, that is the route that everyone kind of gives you.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's the only one. A lot of people that did none of that and did a lot of more other experiences and then realized they wanted to do law and just applied for a training contract and got it. There's this horrible daunting test that is called the Glaser test. It is kind of like the LNAT in a lot harder ways, and that is something you need to study for vacation schemes or training contracts. I'm not there yet, but it is a bit daunting in my opinion.
Yeah, I did my research on that as well, and it's never ending, you know. It can feel really daunting, like how far you need to go to actually pursue a career in the legal field.
I know, but don't feel like it's the only way.
If you take it step by step, I promise it's not as daunting as you think it is.
And that's just for the UK. Other countries are different, so you could always do your LLB here and then kind of move on somewhere else if you feel like it. Okay, moving on to something really important, and that's kind of our last segment, and then we can give like our official advice. But like exams, how exams are graded and how they're sat. For me, they were mostly online last year between coursework and 24-hour exams. They still are. And you need to understand that universities in the UK separate their exams into formatives and summatives. Formatives are exams where you just get feedback or even a grade, but it doesn't count. Summatives, you get usually, unfortunately, less feedback for us, but you do get a grade that counts.
Personally, I only had one 24-hour exam so far, and it was multiple choice. And I think I did okay because I had a lot of time to prepare. But I have a lot of coursework, and I think law school is always associated with all the exams and the exam stress, but you don't realize how many assignments you have, which are essays or skeleton arguments or stuff like that, which is still super, super important, and they count towards your grade just as much. But it's not an exam, and it's so important to learn how to write legally and to have that legal vocabulary and to be fluent is so much different to anything else you experience.
And just the structures.
Exactly. So I think going beyond the exam title, so-called, is all the assignments was super, super important. And I think every university in the UK offers extra legal writing support. Don't mind us, and they'll run extra workshops to help us develop that skill. And I think it's super, super important to get that down.
Just take any opportunity that your university gives you, because, you know, worst case, you go and you feel like it's a waste of time and never go again. But best case, you actually get something.
You'll always get something out of it.
You know, I think for us, it was like a random opportunity that Carlos told me about. We received an email and they were like, okay, like some lawyers from Linklaters are okay with reviewing CVs. In your CV and you'll get a review. At that time, we weren't even specifically looking for anything, but we're like, you know what, let's just send them in. Got amazing feedback on it, and honestly, like, it made it just so much more easy to kind of visualize what my CV was supposed to have and what it lacked and what it had too much of. And yeah, just take any opportunity you're given. In terms of exams, I didn't know that at the time. That's an advice I wish I was given. Big universities, based on also the type of exams you enjoy and you're good at sitting. If you're better at coursework, and believe me, I am better at coursework than taking exams, do prioritize going to university that does more coursework than exams, because it's so important to feel like you're assessed in the right way for your own abilities.
Exactly. I think it's very important to look at not just university and the name of the university and if it's Russell Group or not or stuff like that, but also the course content itself.
And then also, just as a last kind of note, if your course, I know you do the normal LLB, and I mean, you'll qualify at the same time as me, which is really exciting. But for example, if you get the chance of doing a year abroad, my boyfriend, for example, does law with European law, or doing something different like English law and French law, do look into it. I know it can be intimidating, but it's also very fun if you are interested in it.
Or even a semester abroad is also.
Yes.
I hope you guys found our advice or ramble valuable. This is our experience so far. Of course, I would give us the benefit of the doubt of our opinions changing in the future as we embark more on our journey towards a legal career.
Like, we want it to be very thorough, very deep for you to just get any information that you needed from it.
I hope you guys find it useful.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God.